Once upon a time, Sigurd, mounted upon his proud horse Grani, rode to the kingdom where King Alv and his mother Theodas ruled together and lived. He came to the great hall and dismounted his horse, and as he did so, he yelled the Volsung name, and King Alv saw that this man could take on many other men and still live. And his mother saw in his deep blue fiery eyes that he was strong and brave, like an eagle. Then he left the hall. He went into the woods where his smith's smithy was, but when he came in, there was no one inside. But as he looked upon the anvil, he saw a thing that he hated so much, a shield with a dragon upon it, the dragon Fafnir, and in the smoke and fire he looked like a real dragon, glowing with reddish-brown scales. Then from behind him, Regin said, "Thou dost look upon Fafnir the dragon, son of Volsungs," he said to Sigurd. "May thou be the one who wilt slay him." "I would not strive with such a horrible beast," Sigurd said. "With a good sword thou mightest be the one who slays him, and win for thyself much renown." Regin whispered, "I shall win renown how my father won renown, in battle with men for the conquest of kingdoms. Thou art no true Volsung if thou won't slay the dragon Fafnir," said Regin. "If thou ride to the crest of the hills, thou mayest look across the desolate land where Fafnir has his den." Once the land was full of peace and prosperity, but Fafnir came and made his den in a cave nearby. "If thou art a true Volsung, thou wilt slay the dragon, and let the land come alive again, and peace and prosperity will grow." "I have naught to do with the slaying of dragons," Sigurd said. "I have to make war against King Laing, and avenge upon him the slaying of my father." "What is the slaying of Laing compared to the slaying of Fafnir the dragon?" Regin cried. "Tell thee what no one else knows of Fafnir the dragon. He guards a hoard of gold and jewels, the like of which you've never seen in your whole life. All this hoard and gold you can make yours by slaying him." "I do not covet jewels or gold," Sigurd said. "No riches is like the riches of Fafnir the dragon. His hoard is the hoard of the dwarf Advari, and once the gods themselves paid it over as a ransom. And if thou wilt win this hoard, thou wilt be as one of the gods." "How dost know of what speaketh Regin?" Sigurd asked. "One day I will tell thee," Regin said. Then Sigurd said, "Make me a sword that is mightier than all other swords, better shapen than all other swords." "Thou canst do this, Regin, for thou art accounted the best swordsmith among men." Regin looked upon Sigurd and agreed. He thought to himself that it would be good for him to be active. For many days, Regin worked upon the sword, Sigurd right beside him helping. Finally, Regin sharpened it, and Sigurd polished it, and the sword was ready. Then Sigurd took the shield that he hated so much and put it on the anvil. He took the sword in both hands, swung it up, and thrust it into the shield. Chips of it came off, but the sword cracked in half in his hands. Angrily he yelled to "Thou hast making me a false sword. Thou must work again until thou hast made a stronger, better sword." The next day, Regin worked on a new sword, doing the same process, but this time uttering some old runes and incantations. Sigurd again took the shield and placed it on the anvil. He raised the sword up high and swung it down. This time the sword cut through the shield, but when it struck the anvil, it shivered and stopped. And he again angrily stormed out of the smithy. Later he came to his mother's palace and asked her, "A greater sword I must have," said he, "than one that is made from metal dug from the earth. The time has come, mother, when thou must put into my hands the broken pieces of Gram, the sword of Sigmund, and of the Volsungs. His mother measured him with her eyes, and knew that it was time. She bade him to come with her to the king's hall. Out of the great stone chest that was in her chamber, she took the beast's skin and the broken pieces of the sword Gram. She said, "Behold the halves of Gram, the mighty sword from Odin's days. I now give these halves to you, my son." And she handed him the 2 halves of Gram. Then she embraced him as she had never embraced him before in his life, and said goodbye. As he walked away, he turned back, looking at his mother with her ruddy hair standing there, gazing at him. And then he went on his way back to the smithy. He awakened Regin, his smith, and showed him the 2 halves of Gram, and commanded him to make a new sword, the new Gram. And when the sword was finished, again Sigurd laid the shield on the anvil, and raised the sword, and with all his might struck down upon the shield, and this time the sword cut through the shield and sheared through the anvil. It was incredible. Then he came to a river and saw some wool floating in it. He struck the wool, and it cut straight in half. Gram could cut through both hardness and fineness. And in happiness and joy, the sword was complete and incredible, and he raised it up in the air, and as he held it, fire ran along the edges, and it was perfect.